in the last stream, we were working on setting up the kind of final tier of ore processing. That, of course, being the arc furnace, taking what was a 50x ore processing system up to almost a 160x ore processing system, which in the last stream we implemented for our uranium and our thorium. And between streams, I've gone ahead and duplicated that system 6 more times. Over here, we now have 6 more arc furnaces, all set up for all of our other processing chains. They're all set up in exactly the same way as the uranium last episode. We have all of our ores being exported to the drawer at the top. They're then extracted down the left-hand side into the input slots here. They're then pulled out from the front, sent around to the crusher, and then from there, the chain is exactly the same as it was before. They're all receiving power on the back, and they're all exporting their slag as well. And I've left a bit of a gap here so we can run through the middle and make it just a little easier for us to get around. So now we're getting 160x ore processing on everything. This isn't the best we can do. If we look at the quest here, it does say that you can tune this up to 294 ingots per ores. And so if we were to completely max out the ore processing chain, we could almost double this again to 300 ingots per ore, which I think we will do at some point. To make that happen, we need to upgrade our induction smelter to produce 4x the number of ores. Right now, we're only getting 3x, and we'd have to upgrade our pulverizer to 3.5x over the current 2.5x. I think those two alone is what takes us up to 294x ore processing, because if you do 2, multiply by 3.5 gets you 7, multiply by 4 gets you 28, multiply by 3.5 gets you some number, multiply by 3 gets you 294. So that is the final processing chain, the final form of maximum tier ore processing, but that's a problem for Futurizing, because for today, what I want to work on is initially at least power, because right now we only have LV capacitor banks, which are fine, but not great. Each one can only input and output 500 redstone flux per tick, and so we need an awful lot of them if we wanted to start storing the massive amount of power that we're able to generate from this reactor here, which is used to process LU-233 fuel. When it does that, it can produce 200,000+ redstone flux per tick. I think it's about 212,000 redstone flux per tick, but it only does it for a very short period of time. And so what I'm hoping we can do in today's stream, I'm hoping we can automate the sending of LU-235 to the first reactor. We can then hopefully automate the production of LU-233 and send it to this reactor so that we do get that 200,000 RF per tick somewhat regularly. I'm not planning for it to be a consistent 200,000 RF per tick, but if we can get it somewhat regularly, we can then start pumping that massive amount of power into what I'm hoping is going to be a pretty big battery from Ender.io, and then we can use that power, hopefully, to make things like our electrolyzer a little bit faster, and also to make these machines over here faster, thus making the whole system of making the LU-235 and therefore the LU-233 faster as well. So that's the plan. To make that happen, we could really do with the bigger battery. We could do this, of course, with the LV capacitor bank. If I really wanted to, we could put down like 1,000 of these, and having 1,000 of these down would allow us to input and output a staggering amount of redstone flux per tick. But I think instead of making a staggering number of LV capacitor banks, it's going to make more sense if we unlock the MV capacitor banks, because if I'm not mistaken, these ones right here can input and output 50,000 redstone flux per tick per capacitor bank. And so it's only going to take, say, 4 of them to be able to fully take in 200,000 redstone flux per tick from the fission reactor. So to unlock that, as per usual, we need some more 64x logistics. We're going to need 32 in total, 16 for each. We need just 8x on the mechanics, which is totally fine. We'll take 2 stacks of that. We then need a little bit of production and a tiny bit of utility. All of that is very straightforward and should allow us to somewhat quickly here hand in all the quests. Oh no, we do need 8x64 on the second one there. That is completely fine. Let's make sure that is handed in. And with that, we should now have access to the MV capacitor bank. So by MV, it does say MV here, but I'm pretty sure it's HV that we've actually unlocked. It is. And the HV capacitor bank is not too difficult to make. It does require more of these HV wire coil, which we have been making previously with Lumium. Thankfully, we do still have quite a bit of Lumium here. We're going to put a full stack into the wire maker over here just to get a bunch of that so we can make really as many as we like. Along with those, we need some HV capacitors, which require more signalum and more Lumium, along with some LV capacitors, which are fairly easy to make. We are missing iron and wood. iron is problematic. The reason we're missing iron is probably due to the fact that... Oh, I'm actually not sure why. Oh, we're out of cinnabar? And the reason we're out of cinnabar is once again because we're out of magma creams. So somebody in the Twitch chat did posit the idea. You'll see that this has been going for the last 2 hours, and it says that it's missing blaze powder. It's odd because it shouldn't be, right? We've taught the system how to make blaze powder, and then we've also taught it how to make magma blocks. And so my thought process was that it would just make all the things and then make the magma blocks. The problem that I think we're running into, as somebody pointed out in the Twitch chat, is that our system is also occasionally making pyrotheum, and that pyrotheum also requires blaze powder, right? And that pyrotheum is then being sent over to our chemical research. So I think what's happening is it starts breaking down the blaze rods into blaze powder, but then instead of holding that blaze powder in like a dedicated storage somewhere waiting until the magma blocks need to be made, I think it instead just kind of dumps the blaze powder back in the system until all the blaze rods are done, and then once all the blaze rods are done, then it starts trying to craft the magma creams. But before all the blaze rods are done, it goes ahead and uses some of that blaze powder to make pyrotheum that it then exports to the chemical researcher. And I think that's how we end up in this situation here where it seems to be missing 17 blaze powder, because there's really no reason for it to be missing 17 blaze powder because it can just make more. But I think that is what's happening. The way that we can fix this is kind of just by not relying on the integrated dynamic system to do the auto crafting for us. If instead of having this item exporter export the magma creams, if we instead get another sequential fabricator, put that up here, and then just have like another pulverizer and potentially a few sequential fabricators actually, if we have this sequential fabricator producing the magma creams, and we just export the blaze powder and the slime balls continuously to that sequential fabricator, and then have the other sequential fabricator making the magma blocks, I think that's going to do the job much more efficiently. For the time being, this will work if we just kind of keep coming back over and fixing it, but I think I'm going to quickly just take a few minutes to try and fix this so it doesn't become a problem again in the future. Okay, so not too long later, I've placed down a spare sequential fabricator that we had in the system right here and taught it how to make magma blocks, and then filled up all of these slots with dirt. I then stole the other sequential fabricator, the one that was here a second ago, the one that knows how to make magma creams, and I placed that down right about here. I've then given both of these guys power, set them both to output to the bottom and input to the top. So now this sequential fabricator is going to output magma blocks to the magma crucible directly, and this guy is going to output magma creams to this guy who then makes the magma blocks. All we need to do now is back here, we've got an item exporter, and so we're going to go and create a new list. That list is going to be set to items, and we're going to add blaze, and then we're going to add slime. And it's at this point that I'm wondering, can you craft a list? I don't think you can, which is unfortunate because here, yeah, there's no option to craft. So actually, forget that. This would work if we had unlimited blaze powder, but we don't have unlimited blaze powder. So what we're going to have to do is put down another item exporter, I think. It's not the end of the world. It basically just means that we need to do this. I did put a pattern validation augment in here, so there's always space for both the slime balls and the blaze powder. And so if we do this and this, just like before, I am going to do this here to make sure that we don't, oversend blaze or oversend slime. That should be fine. And so now, if I quickly clear this, we just need to do kind of the same thing again, but opposite. We need to get 2 more item cards, 1 for blaze and 1 for slime. The slime one doesn't need to be set to autocraft because we're not crafting slime. So blaze needs to go in like so, and then slime can go in like so. We'll put blaze in, let's say, here. And on this one, we'll say crafting true, which it is. And then over here, this one, we're going to go with slime. This one doesn't need crafting set to true, again, because we're not going to have to craft slime. We need to make sure that this left side here is set to input as well. And there we go. That's going to continually produce magma creams until it backs up. Down here, this is going to continually produce magma blocks until this backs up. Once this is backed up, and this is backed up, and this is backed up, it'll stop exporting things. And yeah, this shouldn't fail, because now the blaze powder has nowhere else to go. The integrated dynamic system can't hijack the blaze now to use it for pyrotheum. It can still make blaze powder for pyrotheum, and that's still going to work just fine, but this should just be a more reliable system for making that magma. Now, one thing I have noticed is that we are pretty full on all of our chests here. Earlier, I tried to put some stuff back in and it wouldn't let me. And so what I might also do real quick here is a little bit of chest crafting. We've got a few normal chests, I think, and I might just make 2 more iron chests, upgrade those to 2 more gold chests, and then upgrade those to 2 more diamond chests, and just throw those down either side of our pre-existing diamond chest setup, so here and here. And then if we quickly connect those up, that's just going to give us a little bit more space to hopefully kind of get us through to the end of the pack. All we had to do here, of course, is get 2 more interfaces. One of those is going to go here, connect that up, and of course the other one is going to go down, you guessed it, here. Nice. And that should allow us to continue to place items into the system. Now that that is fixed, we should hopefully start to see iron coming in again, and so hopefully now if we head back to making those HV capacitors, we should be able to make this happen. So LV capacitors are easy enough. We need planks, which is completely fine. I'll make a few stacks of those, drop them back in the system. LV capacitors are just iron, redstone, copper, and wood. We'll make a couple of those, and then we can upgrade them to the HV capacitors with wooden storage crates, which are made from treated wood. I'll make a stack of those because we've got a ton of treated wood ready to go. Drop that back in the system, and that should be everything to make at least a couple of these, and then from there we can make at least a couple of these. Before we do that though, we of course need yet more of these, which of course means yet more treated sticks. Again, we'll get a few stacks of those. We've got unlimited treated wood. Boom, and boom. We are a little low on lumium. We don't have loads of it, and so that's something we might have to start to look into. But for now, we can get 4 of these, which is bang on 200,000 RF per tick. I think, ideally, I'd want to get at least 1 more. That gives us 250,000 RF per tick, which is enough to kind of exceed the amount of power the reactor is going to build. And so, what I'm thinking here is that what we should be able to do, as I mentioned previously, is get some fission ports, and we can use the fission ports to, I believe, extract power and also insert items to sections of the reactor that are not the controller. So let's make a couple of these, and let's think about where we want to put these down. Because what we can do here, and this is not running at the minute, so we can break it quite safely. What we can do, breaking it might get rid of its internal power buffer. Like, I don't know if it's going to keep the power that it had in there. Oh, it totally is. Nice. So I believe that, as you can see here, this does have the power at the top. I think we can extract from this. And so if we were to do this, it's going to start pulling that power in from the reactor port. And of course, if this is big enough, it'll be able to pull all the power in as it's being made, which is good. And so what I'm thinking is that if we want to be able to run the electrolyzer that's making plastic at a very fast speed, we need to put more speed and energy upgrades into it. So what we could do, that I think is a bad idea, is we could unlock the next tier of energy conduits. These can process 500,000 redstone flux per tick. There is then the even higher tier that can do 500,000 RF per tick, and then a super high tier that can do 5 million RF per tick. And we could unlock, at the very least, the EV conduits, I think, if we had enough chemical research, which we don't. But I think what we can do instead is we can just place the electrolyzer directly onto one of these capacitor banks, and that's going to allow it to receive up to 250,000 redstone flux per tick. So if we did something like this, and we kind of just ran this along the floor, like that, we now have 3 slots here where we can put machines and they can receive a lot of power, right? So for example, this machine here right now is using 5,000 RF per tick. If I were to move it to here, it's now able to access all of the power in this bank, and it's also able to receive it at up to 250,000 redstone flux per tick, because that's the max output on this HV capacitor bank. And so now we could add substantially more speed and energy upgrades to this setup without the whole thing stopping, right? This is using 18,000 RF per tick, but that's fine because this can output that much. Obviously, it's not going to last for long because the power is going to run out, but what I'm hoping here is that if we can get this automated in such a way that the LEU-233 fuel is being made somewhat regularly, we'll hopefully always have a decent amount of power in here. And then instead of making this faster, which I do want to do, we could also look at making the plastic faster, which is just going to allow us to get more chemical research and progress further with that. So that's kind of my thought process. For now, though, let's focus on getting this automated. So to do that, we need to send this guy, the LEU-235, directly into the fission reactor, this one here. So for that, we have a couple of options. So yeah, we want to automate the sending of the LEU-235 into this reactor. To do that, I think I'm just going to move this setup kind of over to here and then put down another one of these fission reactor ports and kind of just pull from this framed drawer into the fission port to get the fuel into the reactor. And then we can have potentially a second port, maybe like here, that we then extract the depleted fuel from to send it around to another processing chain over to here, where we can then process it into the LU-233, insert that, and then we can work after that on processing into the HEP-241. Okay, so I think something like this is actually going to work out quite well for us here. So the thought process, if I quickly go and steal some of these interfaces back, is also this one as well would be ideal. The thought process here is kind of the same as before, but just in a more condensed setup. So we're going to have energy, of course, exported to the isotope separator. Let's do that. We'll do it on the back, actually. We'll do the energy there, and we'll do the item exporting here, and we'll make sure, of course, both of those are connected up like that, and I'll put one of these down, let's say, here. So this is going to receive power, of course, from the back, and it's going to receive uranium, which is what I assume this card is, to the side. So that's going to send uranium to the isotope separator and power. Perfect. The power is hopefully already set to 5,000. It is not. We can fix that. And now that's going to make the uranium-238 and the uranium-235 that's then going to get extracted at the top here, always active, and we're just going to set both of these to insert. So now instead of having a lot more item conduits, we have one item conduit that sends the tiny clumps of 235 to here and the full-size clumps of 238 up to the top. Perfect. Then, over here, we can set this to auto-input. That's going to pull both the full non-tiny clumps of 235 out of this drawer and the 238 out of this drawer into here, and then once it's made, it's going to eject to the left, auto-eject, and that's where the LU-235 fuel is going to go. From here, we want to set this to extract always active, set U to insert, and that should put the LU-235 fuel in there. That's going to start making power. All is good. So real quick, what I might do, I might turn that insert off, and I might take some of that fuel out, because before we go any further, I think I do want to hook this reactor up to the energy cell that we have here. Now, this doesn't produce that much power, but I think it's probably going to be worth us getting like quite a few more of these HP capacitor banks, because again, this guy produces a lot of power very quickly and then it fills up the buffer. But I would like to be able to run this over to here and have both of these connected, and ideally, obviously, the next reactor connected as well. And what would be useful is if we could also connect this bank up to this isotope separator, because this is going to be our limiting factor in terms of how fast we can make the LU-235. Right now, we've got a good backlog of it, but that's just because we've been making it for so many episodes. Once we burn through this, currently we're not really separating the uranium very quickly. I'd like to be able to get more speed and energy upgrades in there, and if we're going to do that, I think we're going to need the HV capacitor bank to run all the way under to this isotope separator. So yeah, let me go and see about making a couple more of these HV capacitor banks so that we can run power to even more machines. Okay, so a few more of these HV capacitor banks later, and we can now connect up this reactor here via this capacitor bank, this reactor here via this capacitor bank, and then now we've also connected up our isotope separator via this capacitor bank. So power is being pulled from there, seemingly before it's being pulled from the network. That's fine. This bank is going to run out of power, but that's okay. Again, for now, that doesn't matter because currently we're not actually producing like a reliable source of power. Hopefully we get to a point where this is kind of filling up quite regularly and we can actually start to increase the amount of power that this uses to make it quicker. Anyway, now that the power is being pulled out of this reactor, I'm happy to set this to insert again so we can start burning through all of the LU-235 fuel. We then want to take that depleted fuel and run it through our decay hastener, right? Let me check that real quick. It is, the fuel reprocessor is where we're going, actually. That's this guy here. So we want to take that fuel reprocessor, and I'm going to put that potentially right here, because then we can extract from here. We might want to grab our filter. Even though I'm fairly certain it's only able to grab the depleted fuel, I don't think it can grab the input fuel. Just to be safe, we'll take a few of these. We'll set this filter here to whitelist the depleted fuel. We'll put that in here on the extract side, like so. Extract, always active, and here we're going to set that to insert. So that should start to receive the depleted LU-235. It's going to start to reprocess that into all of these different clumps that we saw previously. Then we're going to do the same kind of thing we did before. We're going to take this drawer, and we can probably put this here. If we set the input to a different color, let's say, I'll go with white. There's a lot of plutonium in here. and then we'll say you extract on white, always active. That should pull up all of these clumps, the 238, the 239, and the 241. The thing we don't want it to extract is the neptunium, which I think has carried over. Yep, that's correct. The neptunium is what's going to go into the decay hastener, right? So we take the neptunium, we run that through the decay hastener, and that gets us the tiny clumps of this uranium that we actually do want. So what we'll do is we'll pick you up, and we'll put you down, let's say, here. I think that should be fine. Let's make sure we get rid of these item conduits as we go. Again, you can shift scroll to fix that if you're not set to the right mode with the ETA wrench. Perfect. So here, we're going to extract, always active, and insert. So you're going to receive that. Perfect. And that's kind of the last machine we need there. So now we want to take this, and I guess we'll put that up here. And again, we'll move the last little item conduit, and we can extract from you, always active, and insert. Perfect. So that's going to go ahead and pull the tiny clumps of uranium-233 up into here. So now the LEU-233, which is over here actually, is the big 233 and then the uranium-238. So we do have uranium-238 over here. And I'm wondering if I should have rearranged this somehow, because now we could do with another sequential fabricator, which I am going to go and just steal from our wall of sequential fabricators, because we have a couple over here that we're not using at the moment. So if I just go and do one of these, we could just take this guy, and background out here, what we'll do is we'll place one down, let's say here, like that, and then as janky as it's going to be, I think just running an item conduit over is going to be the best course of action here, i.e. just kind of extracting from here and then running that across and over into this guy. If we do something like that, obviously I want to make sure that this here isn't set to insert. Also here and here, don't set that to insert. Here we're going to set you to extract, always active. The only potential problem here is if we ever run out of uranium in here, what I might do is I might set the top of this to insert as well, and then I might reconnect this bit like that, and I'm just going to set the priority on this to 10, and I'll set the priority on this to -10, because of course this is already pulling in from the side here, but on the off chance that this doesn't have any uranium and the item conduit gets to the uranium first, I want it to go in here before it goes over here, because we need the LEU-235 fuel more than we need the LEU-233. Over here, we are going to need to get, you guessed it, a pattern validation augment. Once we have the pattern validation augment, we can put that in here, and we can teach this to make the LEU-233 fuel and set it to input from the bottom, auto input on. That should pull in some of the uranium. Perfect. And then let me check this one. Yes, I want my dirt here, like this. And we also want to set the right-hand side to input as well. That should start receiving the uranium-238. That's going to make LEU-233. Perfect. And then from there, we could, if we wanted to, run all the way down to this fission reactor port, run a cable down. But I'm pretty sure that we can also just get another fission reactor port. And if we were to put that down on here, we could then just set the left-hand side to output. That should start receiving the fuel. It's going to make a ton of power. This is going to start filling up real quickly, and that's good. So we could do with a much bigger battery, because you'll see that already this kind of filled up. We've got two choices, really. We could do with either a much bigger battery or a much bigger power usage, but it really depends. I guess it's kind of a chicken egg problem here, because we could do with making this faster, right? If we make that faster, that's going to start using the power more, but that's also going to start making the fuel more. But that's kind of perfect. Give me as many of those as you can make, which is going to be just under a stack, I think, maybe 48. 51 sounds good. And then I'd say give me as many of those as you can make, but I think we need more fluxed electrum ingots for that. As per usual, we're stealing those from our research machines. That's completely fine. Let's do this and give me as many of those as you can make. It should be about the same amount. 32 is not quite the same amount. That's very expensive on the fluxed electrum front. Completely fine though. Let's try that one more time. Can I get 51-ish of those? I can. 48 is close enough. So what's the maximum this can use in terms of power? approximately 66,000 redstone flux per tick, which is a lot, but it's not too much. Like, already it's going down, but we're making more fuel, right? Like, I took fuel out. I took 14 fuel out, but I think this is fine. The energy buffer is holding up strong here. We're burning through the uranium at a staggering speed, but I think this is kind of just working. This is now full, which is what we want to see. These are being processed. I guess the next thing is to make you faster, and it's probably a case that we probably don't need the maximum number in here. If I were to do this, you're now using 66,000 RF per tick as well. I would like that to be an even number there of energy and speed upgrades. And then I guess here as well is where we also want more of them. So, you know what? Let me take maybe even more out of here and do this. There's also then the problem of just extracting too slowly out of this. We do have tiny clumps of uranium-238 here, and we should be using those, I think, in the production of LEU-233. And so it's probably a good idea for us to get another compacting drawer. Apparently we're missing basically everything for that. Are we... Oh no, I was going to say we're out of redstone. We're not out of redstone, we're out of wood, of course. Let's get another stack of pistons, and let's get another couple of storage drawers. And I think we'll put that down maybe like here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set another channel. We'll go with... No, that's fine for now. We're going to reconnect this guy, ideally, right here. I'm going to set this to... Well, first of all, I'm going to take you, put you in up here. And I didn't realize there were blocks of uranium. That's fine. Let's get a draw key, put you there. And then now we can set you to insert on, let's say, cyan. And we'll set you to extract on cyan. And then we'll also set you to extract on green, always active. That way, what should happen, if we reconnect that, is now the uranium-238 should get extracted from here and inserted up here, if I've done that correctly and made sure it's set to always active. That should start getting the tiny clumps of uranium-238, turning them into actual uranium-238. That uranium-238 can then be extracted down and sent around into here as just more uranium-238, which is perfect. And it's also still going to go here first, if it can, which is good. That's where we want it to go. And so that's going to keep that going. What I will do, I think we do need the plutonium in here, so I'm going to get a upgrade kit and upgrade this, but I'm also going to put a void upgrade in there as well so that it doesn't mess us up later on down the line if it does completely back up. So let's do that as well. So that should work. Again, it's really a question of just how fast we can extract, because the extraction seems to be the limiting factor here. I don't really think we have, outside of using a little integrated dynamic system, which might be worth it, honestly. It might be worth getting a few item interfaces, like an item interface and an item exporter. And it's awkward because you know, it's probably maybe fine. It's more awkward here because we can't, using integrated dynamics, you can't insert and extract from the same face like we are doing here with the conduit, but we also don't have access to the conduit speed upgrades. And so there's not really much we can do here outside of using integrated dynamics. The question really, though, is whether or not this is fast enough as is. And it's pretty quick, but could probably be faster. You'll see we are backing up on power here, so I think there is going to be some excess that we can use for the plastic production if we can make a few more capacitors and maybe set the plastic up like here, potentially. But this is working, which is good. And so we are making depleted LEU-235 fuel. We need to take that depleted fuel and run it through another fuel reprocessor to get the plutonium-242. So let's go quickly steal another machine frame, and let's get another fuel reprocessor up and running. All right, so I've got another fuel reprocessor. Also, after a little bit of conversation with the Twitch chat, it turns out that this is a lot easier than I thought it was. I was thinking we would need, like, an item exporter and an item interface on the fuel reprocessor, but it turns out we can put one item interface on the top. That gives the little mini network that we have here access to the depleted fuel. Over here, we've just got an item importer that imports the LEU fuel. It can't go in here, so it has to go down here, which is where it goes. It imports it into the item interface. And then up here, we've got the item exporter that is set to export all items because this drawer is locked, and therefore all of the clumps are going to go up there. And so, yeah, this works. This imports the depleted fuel down to here, gets processed, exports it up here. This is much faster than what we were doing before, and so now when this is actually, done running through its stuff, everything is good and working. So right now, power is a problem. That's just because this is backed up. Once this gets backed up, obviously it can't make power. So now we need to actually start reprocessing that fuel. And so I guess what we'll do is I kind of don't want to put the fuel reprocessor here, even though I feel like that would be the most sensible place to put it because the fission reactor port is there. And you know what? Sure, we've got things on the front of that reactor, so you know what? I'm going to put it here. That way we can just extract from here down into the fuel reprocessor. Again, always active, and insert. That should start receiving the depleted fuel, and then by extension, that should also start making power again, which should keep this guy and this guy going at full speed. And then back over here, we need to take, well, we need to speed this up, obviously, but then we need to take what's produced here and send it places, because we need the plutonium-241 and the plutonium-242. We already have some plutonium-241 here. This is where things can get a little bit messy, potentially. But I think we can make it less messy with just different item channels. So let me get another 2x2 drawer, because there's a couple of things here that we don't really need. So we do have these frame drawers. I'll quickly marbleify that to make it look like the rest of our drawers. Boom, boom. And we'll place that down probably right here. And then we can set this to extract on a different channel, and we'll insert into there. So the 239, I don't think we need. The Americium we also don't need. So what I'll do is, just to make maximum use of this, we'll do this, and we'll do this, and I'll lock this drawer. And so what we'll do is we'll set this to extract on a different color. Let's say white again. Extract. And here, we'll set the to insert. So that's going to start extracting this. Again, we might have to replace this with integrated dynamics at some point in the not-so-distant future. But for now, that works. And then we want to take the plutonium-242 and the plutonium-241, and we want to send both of those to compacting drawers, because the next thing we need requires 241 and 242 in its non-tiny form. So let's get 2 more compacting drawers, and we'll put those down, let's say here and here. And we'll use one for plutonium-242 and another for plutonium-241, like that. We'll then lock both of those, and we'll put down another item conduit here and make sure that both of these are set to insert. So now that that is getting extracted correctly, or should be getting extracted correctly, of course I need to set this to insert on white. Everything here needs to insert on white, and on white. That should start pulling everything out of the top, as long as that's set to always active. Perfect. And so now those are all being pulled out, which is good. That should allow more fuel to get processed, which should allow more power to be made. Again, we could definitely do with the speed upgrades here to make this faster, but also, I guess, speed upgrades to extract faster. And by that, I, of course, mean potentially the integrated dynamics cables, because these are just not quick enough. Although, this is not particularly fast at processing, so we might be able to extract before this is processed. But, again, we do want to make that processing faster, because otherwise we're going to run out of power here, which is another problem. But either way, this is good. Let me go steal yet another sequential fabricator. And we're going to use this one, you guessed it, to make that next tier of fuel. So we'll put you down probably right about here. And then we'll just use a different color. We'll say light gray. I know I'm not making it easy by making these colors so similar, but if we extract on light gray, we can then insert on light gray up here. With, of course, our good friend, the pattern validation augment. Which one are you? You're 241, and the one we have over here is 241. Yeah, so the super janky way of doing it is, of course, to do something like this, and then just disconnect here, disconnect here, disconnect here, and connect to there. Not here, sorry, we want to connect there. Reconnect there, and then disconnect here. If we did this, this does work. If we go extract, always active, and insert, that's going to pull even more of the tiny clumps of plutonium-241 out of here and send them around into here. We'll stick with a janky way for now. We might look at cleaning it up in the future, but that's going to work. That's going to pull the excess 241 from over there to over here. And so now we've got more of an even amount of 241 and 242. Up here, we're going to insert on light gray just as soon as we get a pattern validation augment, which needs yet another redstone server and yet another tin gear. With the pattern validation augment, we can then set you to making the HEP fuel, and we'll set the bottom here to input, and we'll figure out the output in just a second. It's probably going to be to the left, though, I'd imagine, because we're going to have probably the next port there for the fuel to go into. Here, you are going to insert like that, and we'll just do something like this to make sure we don't end up with too much stuff. You need to be set to extract, always active, and extract, always active. That should pull the right items up into here. It has done for the 241. The 242, though, is not extracting. Oh, that's because I have blocked off the wrong slots. There we go. Okay, I need to block off the right slots. When the recipe is different, which it is, it's not always the same slots you need to block off. But this is working. Nice. We've got HEP 241, which is good. So now we got two things to do. We kind of just need, I guess this guy here is getting power from here, which I wasn't really thinking about, but that does kind of work just fine. And it also means that in a somewhat janky fashion, which is kind of part of the course here, we can do this, and that's going to allow this to receive power from this reactor. So this is all good. Now we just need to take the HEP fuel and pump it into the next reactor. The trouble with the HEP fuel that we're going to run into is that its base heat generation is 780 heat units per tick. For reference, the LU-235 and the LU-233, both of these have a heat gen of 10 heat units per tick, and so the heat output on the HEP here is substantially higher than these previous fuels. You know, it's 78 times higher, and from my testing with the website that tells us the fission reactor designs, we're not going to be able to just get away with using lapis as our only coolant for the next tier of fuel. Okay, so back over here on LU235.com, if we try the same setup here, so we have our fuel power base set to 800 redstone flux per tick, I'll zoom in a bit, and we have our fuel base heat set to 780 heat units per tick. This is what we have to work with. We've got our reactor set to 15 by 5 by 3, and we have the same setup down here where we're kind of telling it to only use lapis. If I hit run, the cooling rate must be a positive number. Oh, that's because I've not put the cooling rate in for gold. Let me quickly check the cooling rate for gold. It is 275. So if we put 275 in for gold and we try that again, you'll see that it doesn't come up with anything. And that's because it is not possible to cool this reactor with this fuel using just lapis, unfortunately. One thing people did suggest is that we could try turning off symmetry here, because it's possible that we could find a slightly more efficient reactor that could potentially do it if we turn symmetry off, but it seems like still it's just not enough to make it work. I think that we could go and set all of these to max allowed, you know, whatever. I think, though, that the best option for us here might just be to unlock the tin coolers. The tin coolers have the best cooling rate at 300 heat units per tick, and they also require lapis coolers. So you have to have a lapis cooler either side of a tin cooler, and we already have lapis coolers. So they are the most expensive to unlock from a research perspective, but they're also kind of the best. You'll see here, the best option is like iron, lapis, gold, red. It's using a whole smorgasbord of coolers here. I don't really want to have to do this much research to get this going, but you'll see that the top ones here are lapis and tin. And so I have a feeling that if we go ahead and hit stop, we do want to optimize for breeding, of course. And if we set everything to 0 apart from lapis and tin, I think we should be able to make this work. Yeah, we totally can. It's going to require quite a few lapis coolers and quite a few tin coolers, but we can get our fuel usage rate fairly high. And I think this is the kind of reactor we're going to want to set up for the next tier of fuel, and also for the tier of fuel after that as well. I'll leave that running in the background, but if we check out the final fuel, this one also has a heat generation of basically the same. It's 750 versus 780. You'll notice these also don't produce that much power, about 38,000 RF per tick. Nothing to complain about, like it's free power, I guess, but nothing compared to the 200,000 RF per tick we get from the LU233. This is definitely the one we want for just raw power throughput, but this is good. This is good. We should be able to, I think, somewhat easily get that set up. For the tin cooler, we are going to need 64 more chemical research that we currently don't have. We got 13, but we do have plastic backing up. We got 272 plastic over there. Speaking of which, let me try moving the plastic setup. It's tricky because until we get the full chain automated, the power is not that reliable, right? The power that we get from this fission reactor is not reliable, because you'll see already we've backed up on LEU-233 fuel. We could, of course, speed this up to make it faster, and then we would start to produce more power here. And we are producing excess power, I think, that we could use for the electrolyzer. But the trouble is, until we get this kind of fully automated, which does require more plastic in the form of more chemical research, but until we get it fully automated, it's going to be tricky for us to reliably use any of this extra power for plastic. Okay, so I think we can get these tin coolers unlocked. Over here, we have enough plastic, 285. I just did some quick crafting with the crafting calculator, and it turns out that 51 chemical research, which is what we need, is only 255 plastic. Now, to get that number, I did teach the crafting calculator how to make the plastic rods using the mega metal press, because as we saw before, the mega metal press is the most efficient way to make those plastic rods. Right now, we've actually got a backlog of plastic rods. In here, we've got 64 in here, and we've got 64 more up here. So I'm just going to manually place the plastic into the compactor for now, because that's going to allow it to make the plates, which are really what we're missing to make more chemical research. But we do have what it takes to get this going. What I also need to do, though, is I just need to make more speed upgrades, I think. More speed and energy upgrades. So, upgrade. Give me another stack of iron plates. I assume we've got the iron for it. Yep, we're up at 10,000 iron now, which is fantastic. I'll do the same with gold as well. Get a stack of gold plates. And then hit me with as many of these as you can. I assume about a stack is what we're going to get from here, because I think we've got enough redstone and aluminum to make that happen. Fantastic. And then a stack of energy upgrades is going to be harder just due to the lack of fluxed electrum. But as per usual, I think we are banking up on fluxed electrum quite nicely. And so over here, let's take you, let's take you, let's take you, and let's take you. I'm going to fully deplete all of these, which might be one of the reasons why we've got less production research than any other tier of research, but it should allow us to get like a stack of energy upgrades here. Perfect. And so now we can start to distribute these over here to see if we can't make, for example, this guy a bit faster. I don't think we need a full stack of either of these. 34,000 redstone flux per tick is madness. I'm going to put some of this stuff away in my inventory. Depleted LU-235 needs to go in here. Are you not still depleting? You're not still depleting. I'm not quite sure why that's not still depleting. Oh, you're out of power. I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually, because there's no power going to that. Let me see about getting power to that, then. I'm thinking about what the best way to do it could be. I think it might just be doing something like this, which I understand is the jankiest possible solution to this problem, is doing something like that. My initial thought was to put an energy conduit here, but then we'd need like a bank above that, and then this set up above that. So I think this is just going to do the trick. And so we could also put a power pot behind this, I guess, from the reactor, and that could work. But this is fine for the time being. It does the job. And that is going to keep the whole system chugging away. Right now that's losing power, but that's fine. Over here, you're full, and that's because you're full, and that's because you're not moving fast enough. So, real quick, let me try to do the same thing I've done here with this guy, because we're inserting and extracting in the same way. And so, I think we might be able to make this work. It's going to be more tricky, though, because we've got like kind of two separate things going on here. So, this should be basically the same, where we put an interface down here, and then we get an importer and an exporter, both item, that is. For that, we need another interface. That's okay. Those are the cheapest of the interfaces to make. So we'll put an importer here. That's going to pull the depleted fuel down into the fuel reprocessor, and then we want an exporter going here. You're going to export everything as soon as we put this logic cable in. You export everything. You, I'll say import specifically the depleted fuel. Again, I don't think that it's ever going to try and import anything that isn't the depleted fuel, because I don't think that it can import from the output slot. But if we do this, that should import those into here. Then up here, we need to export to the sequential fabricator. We also need to import and export to these guys, which might be fine. So over here, I think we're going to have to get rid of this, which I think is fine. I think what we'll do is we'll get two more item exporters. We'll export here and here, like this. And then I think all we'll do is we'll just get item conduits. And instead of running through the middle like we did before, it's going to require an extra cable. But if we do this and this, we can then set the sides to input instead of output, like that. And then we need to set U to extract, always active, U to insert, and you guessed it, over here, we're going to set this guy to extract, always active, and U to insert. And I think that should kind of just work. That should keep the fuel going up. That should allow the fuel processing to take place. You are trying to export, but you're full. Okay, so once again, I don't know if we need the Americium here that we're working on. Like, this Americium is, I don't think, necessary. We've got diamond upgrades. I'm going to make those instead of emerald upgrades because the emeralds are a bit of a pain to get. We'll do this, and then just like before, we'll get another void upgrade to keep this whole train chugging, mostly to make sure that power keeps coming in. That's kind of my main concern at the moment, is just getting enough power. So let's do this. Upgrade base, and void upgrade, and boom. So now that should keep all of this chugging along, hopefully, as long as these aren't full. This is not full. This is filling up. That's probably okay. And then what is going up here? 241 is making its way in. 242 is not. That's because there is no 242. And that's because I need you to export everything and you to export everything. And that should start pulling things out of there. It does. Now that's moving much more quickly. And that should, hopefully, in turn, kick this back into gear. This is making power. That's all good. Everything is now back online, which is perfect. All right, so the chemical research is coming in, but of course these machines are real slow, but hopefully by the time we come back for next episode, we'll have enough chemical research to unlock these tin coolers. I have quickly gone ahead and thrown an upgrade onto the tin drawer, just in case we need more than 2,048 tin, so now more tin is being made and backing up in that drawer there. And what I'm going to do as well, before we wrap up here, is I'm going to finalize the automation over here of lapis, because right now we don't actually have that much lapis. In here, we've got this backed up on lapis, which is good, but we are running out of diamonds, and we do need those diamonds for other parts of our process. So what I am thinking is, if I get another loot fabricator, we can place that down, probably like right about here, and then it should just be a case of getting our polymer clay inserted into this tiny item input. For that, we need, you guessed it, item conduits. Let's do this, this, and this. And now it's been a while. I have completely forgotten which channel we're inserting on here. Oh, it's just green. Okay, cool. So if we just set this to insert, it should start to receive polymer clay from our drawer. It totally does. That should get to work producing yet more pristine shulker matter over here. And then to fully automate this, we can set U to extract, insert here, always active here. Make sure this is set to produce lapis, and of course, make sure this guy has power. Making sure this guy has power should just be as simple as getting one of our energy exporters. And before the episode, I made a bunch of these omnidirectional connectors, and so we can kind of just throw that down. Although I guess, you know what, might as well do this and save on an omnidirectional connector. Boom, you've got power. And are you producing the pristine matter? You are indeed. You're set to extract. I always forget every single time that you cannot, annoyingly, you cannot insert into the back of the loot fabricator. You have to insert into the top of the loot fabricator like this, which means that somewhat awkwardly we are going to have to give power to a different side. I also am pretty sure that you have to extract the lapis from the bottom, so I think we might have to do this and this to get power to that, which is horrible. But then, if we take another compacting drawer, we can then throw our lapis in there and connect that up to our system, at which point we should then be able to start backing up on lapis, because next episode we're going to come back and hopefully we're going to get the final 2 reactors up and running. I think I'll put the lapis here, and I'll just quickly craft up a few more item conduits to make sure that we can run all the way over to that. Let me do this, 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 and this. We'll set you to insert. We can obviously cover this middle one with the facade. You extract, always active. That's going to pull the lapis out. The lapis is now in there. That is perfect. And yeah, if we throw down an interface, we can then hopefully access that lapis from our simple storage network wireless crafting remote. And next time we'll come back, we'll craft up yet more lapis coolers, loads of them. We will unlock tin coolers, craft up a bunch of tin coolers. Over here, I have put down the basic framework for the final 2 reactors, so these are ready to start filling in. We, of course, need 2 more controllers. And, of course, next time we'll come back and we will continue this horrific wall of machinery that is designed in such a way to allow us to process the remaining fuel. So we'll set up the processing for the HEP, we'll set up the refining of the depleted HEP, and then we'll set up the crafting of the HECM. And then, finally, we'll take the depleted HECM and we will use that to get the californium. That californium can then be used to make the quantum research. Everything else here is kind of fine. The thermoconducting alloy requires extreme alloy, which is tough alloy and hard carbon alloy. Hard carbon is diamond and graphite. Graphite is just like pulverized coal. So it's just coal here that we need, and we've got unlimited coal coming in, so we should be able to make those. And then boron arsenide is a little bit more of a pain. This one's going to require some chemical reactoring from nuclear craft. We need boron and arsenic, which we need crushed arsenic, which we get from crushing andesite in a rock crusher. Should be very doable, though, again. Andesite we can automate fairly easily. And other than that, it's the DU plating, uranium-238 we're making, sulfur we're making, advanced plating we're making. And so, yeah, quantum research should be on the cards for us. And after that, we can then look at handing in some of these quests. We only need a total of 1.5 stacks of quantum research. We need 32 for the portal coolant, 32 for the portal frame, and 32 for the locator probe research. I don't think anything else really needs it. So I think 1.5 stacks of quantum is all that we need. So really, we only need 1.5 stacks of californium, which is not really that much fuel, actually. We're setting things up here in such a way that we can make a lot of it. But to be honest, we get 48 californium. Actually, more than that. We get 48 plus an extra 8 here. We got like 56 californium here, which is enough to make 56 research because it's only a tiny piece you need. So we'd really only need to deplete 2 HECM 247 fuel to get enough californium to complete these quests here. But while we're here, might as well automate it and get it all set up so we could make really as much as we like. And then we can start focusing, of course, on getting more research if we need it, which I think we will because we need a lot of chemical research for this. 48x8 chemical research. And then we can look at getting these final quests as well knocked out. And yeah, that's going to be at the end of the pack, but that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Feed the Factory there.